The Giants are playing at a 94.5 win pace overall, but 118 win pace against right-handed starters, just 43 win pace against left-handed starters, and we saw that again show up last night in a loss. So what the heck is going on? And actually, I'm going to explain why it looks like, to me, a fluke.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, we discussed it going into yesterday's game, and we're going to discuss it now that it happened again. Giants had trouble against a left-handed starter. And so is it an issue of having trouble against just left-handed pitching in general, or is it just a fluky thing where they've happened to lose a lot of games, a majority of their games that have been started against by lefties? And so we'll dive into the numbers there, and we will also discuss the return of Casey Schmitt and why it probably means David Villar ends up on another team now. And also Robbie Ray, like, he did everything he could do to keep the Giants lossless in his starts, but the Giants couldn't handle the lefty starter. So yeah, let's dive into that first as the Giants fall to the Kansas City Royals in a game that went scoreless into the late innings. Robbie Ray didn't allow a run. It was Tyler Rogers allowing a 2-out, 2-run homer in the 8th, and then Jordan Hicks in his first outing out of the bullpen this year giving up a run in the 9th. But the storyline is that the Giants couldn't score, and outside of their 9-1 win against the A's, they have not scored a lot of runs in their recent games. So yeah, they're 24-9 in games started by right-handed pitchers, and they're 4-11 in games started by left-handed pitchers. So they have more losses in 15 games started by lefties than they do in 33 games started by righties. So that is odd, and I want to dive into it a little closer. We did look at this earlier in the year, but I want to dive into it a little closer to see, is it just that they can't hit lefties? Because that seems to be what everyone is, not everyone, but a lot of the analysis I've seen is like they struggle against lefties. But is that the case, or are they just like losing games that are started by left-handed pitchers? So overall on the season, we can look at numbers against righties and numbers against lefties. So for the Giants, they actually have, in fact, struggled against left-handed pitching. And that may not sound surprising, but earlier in the year, and in fact, my little conclusion there that it was fluky, I still think it is probably fluky when we dive into the individual player performances. But overall on the season against left-handed pitchers, not just against left-handed starters, the Giants' offense has been has produced about 17% below average offense. And that equates to, I mean, that is, let's see, that number is 18th in baseball. They're hitting just 222 with a 286 on base and 367 slugging against left-handed pitching overall. Whereas against right-handed pitching overall, they are hitting, let's see, they are hitting 242 with a 322 on base and 394 slugging. So those numbers aren't, it's not like they've done great against right-handed pitchers. That's roughly league average offense. It's just that only ranks 17th. Whereas, what did I say they were against lefties? They rank 18th, 17th, and 18th. But so I guess in general, the league has struggled significantly more against left-handed pitching than they have against right-handed pitching. Although there are some teams that have done extremely well, there are only 11 teams that have an above-average weighted runs created plus against lefties this year, whereas against righties this year, there are 21 teams that have been average or better. And so that is a little bit odd to me. I don't know if that's a consistent thing, but when we dive into the individual players, like that's where it's going to get interesting because so against left-handed pitching, if we look at who has done well for the Giants, Tyler Fitzgerald has done well. Matt Chapman has done well, although Alex Pavlovich pointed out that I think Chapman only has a few extra base hits against lefties all season. So he was saying that even though the overall like weighted runs created plus for Chapman looks good against lefties, I don't know. I mean, he's hitting 286 with a 412 on base, but yeah, just a 405 slugging. So he hasn't hit for power against lefties, but those are good numbers. And Jung-Hoo Lee has done well against lefties. Elliot Ramos has done well against lefties. Sam Huff has done well against lefties, despite a 44% strikeout rate. And after that, you know, it's the rest. It's Mike Yastrzemski a little bit below average, Wilmer Flores below average, that's weird. I mean, it's a small sample, so it's not that weird. It's not something to freak out about, but everybody else below average. And I think the one guy who probably stands out the most as hurting them in a significant way would be Willy Adames with just an 8 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching. 143 average, 210 on base, 161 slugging. So that's where I would look at where are the hits and where are the extra base hits? There's not much to speak of. And then how about Luis Matos? A 0 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching. And Wade has not played that much against lefties. But if you combine Adames and Matos, that's about 100 plate appearances with just abysmal numbers. And those are two right-handed bats. And Patrick Bailey hasn't really been good against lefties or righties, but he's been about 20 or 75%, I should say, below average overall against lefties. And Christian Koss about 50% below average. So a lot of these guys who find themselves in like platoon situations, Christian Koss was forced into more regular playing time when Tyler Fitzgerald was injured, but guys who like mostly play against lefties haven't done what you'd want them to do in the form of Christian Koss and Luis Matos specifically. Others like Sam Huff, he actually has 294 batting average, 333 on base, and 471 slugging against left-handed pitching. So when we look at right-handed pitching, who are the guys who have done well in that regard? Mike Yastrzemski leading the way. Elliot Ramos, 37% above average. That's a great thing to see when you've got a young right-handed bat who's doing, you know, he did well against lefties last year, but struggled against righties. Well, he's also doing well against lefties this year and against righties. Wilmer Flores has done his best work against righties, and so has Willy Adames. And I do just want to point out that Willy Adames has real reverse platoon splits, but not like this. Like, it's not like he's unplayable against left-handed pitching, but he's one of the few guys I've seen over a large sample of a career. You know, we're talking over 1,000 plate appearances against lefties. He's been 15% below average, not just like below average for righties against lefties, but overall offense that he produces when it's a lefty on the mound is 15% below major league average offense. Whereas when it's a righty on the mound, it's 17% above average offense in his career. We're talking 2,742 plate appearances. So that is a large enough sample to say Willy Adames legitimately seems to have very real reverse platoon splits, and that's unusual. But he just does better against righties, and that's been the case this year. So that is something to look at. And oddly, like Jung-Hoo Lee has done much better against lefties than righties. Matt Chapman is kind of more of what you would expect. He's done well against righties or lefties, but decent against righties. And I don't know, Tyler Fitzgerald, same thing, decent against righties, but has struggled but really good against lefties. I'm trying to look at the guys who really stand out. I mean, Lamont Wade Jr. just not doing much against righties has hurt them, but overall, yeah, the numbers do make it make sense that they have done well against righties, but they've struggled against left-handed starters. So we'll look at, is it just starters or is it relievers as well? And then we'll discuss the roster move with Casey Schmitt returning, David Villar, what it means for him and why I think it means he ends up on another team now in the not too distant future. We'll discuss in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. If you have multiple accounts like I do, all over the place, Monarch Money is a game changer. Just to have it all in one place, like I said, that financial command center, instead of bouncing around from website to website, all your investments, all your spending, all there and traceable and trackable in one place. It is a game changer, and it is so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. If you use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com, you will get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, as promised, we are going to dive a little bit deeper and just see, is there anything more going on here? Is it just the starters that the Giants are struggling against when it comes to lefties and righties, or is it overall? Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, Giants aren't facing a lefty, so hopefully be able to pick up a win tonight. Michael Lorenzen on the mound for the Royals. Hayden Birdsong making his first start of the season, and perhaps in a dream scenario, his first of many, and he never looks back and has a long, successful career. I know he started last year, but this is his first start this year, and perhaps he never looks back. So we'll get into that tomorrow. And so, yeah, just to look a little bit closer, I don't even know actually if it lets me sort against starters versus relievers. It does if I do this more sophisticated search, and no, we're just gonna assume. I mean, just breaking things down into that small of a segment is probably just adding noise to the equation. And I mean, just one of the things that I would look for is Willy Adames to not be almost 100% below average against left-handed pitching, like career about 15% below average, not 92% below average. And Lamont Wade Jr. has killed righties in his career, but this year he's been 30% below average against righties. And then, I don't know, Jung-Hoo Lee to kind of even out and not do better against. I wouldn't expect Jung-Hoo Lee to have reverse platoon split, so I would expect those to kind of stabilize as things go on. And then Patrick Bailey, who's done poorly against both, I would expect that he gets better because he's he's been, even though he struggled the last 2 seasons, overall, offensively, he's struggled like 2 times as badly offensively this year, and I wouldn't bank on that continuing. So anyway, as it is, I think that they should do better against lefties moving forward, and probably significantly worse against righties moving forward. Like, those numbers are crazy. As I said, 118 win pace against right-handed starters and a 43 win pace against left-handed starters doesn't make any sense. So anyway, one player, Casey Schmitt, also is part of the weirdness in that he has been worse against left-handed pitching. We are talking small samples here, though. 23 plate appearances against lefties, where he's hitting 190, 261 on base, 286 slugging. Schmitt is a right-handed hitter. You would expect him to do better against lefties. That is also his role. It kind of doesn't help that both Schmitt and Matos, who are players who mostly do their playing against lefties, have both actually done better against righties. And so that, whenever they've gotten their starts or they've made a start against a lefty and then a reliever has come in, they've done their best work when it's not been the pitcher they're in there to do damage against. And so that kind of helps it make sense. So yeah, like I said, I just gave you the numbers for Schmitt against lefties. He's only got 4 plate appearances against righties, actually. So that's way too small of a sample to read anything into. And he was activated. He was activated off the injured list yesterday. He was dealing with I think it was a left oblique for quite a while. I mean, he missed a few weeks and finally back. And it meant David Villar was DFA'd for the 2nd time this season. So he was DFA'd, I think it was just ahead of opening day because he was on the 40-man and out of options. So somewhat surprisingly to me, David Villar cleared waivers that first time. It would have meant if someone had claimed him that they would have had to have him on their major league roster. And teams had their roster set ahead of opening day, but still, like some team, I don't know, the Rockies or something, there's probably some player on their major league roster they could have let go and given. Would David Villar be a better guy to give chances to than somebody on some bad team? Well, all the teams said no thank you, and so he cleared waivers. Nobody claimed him. And one time in your career, if you're DFA'd and you clear waivers, a team can outright you to the minors. So they can just send you to the minor leagues without your consent, essentially. Again, even though the reason you're out of options is because they've already sent you to the minors so many times. But when they brought him back up, when Casey Schmitt went down, it essentially spelled the end the next time David Villar, or even just the next time, or just when Casey Schmitt got healthy, it always meant you were likely to lose David Villar because they had to clear a spot on the major league roster for Casey Schmitt. And the obvious logical answer was to, not have Schmitt and Villar on the roster at the same time. I don't want to call them redundant because I think they're kind of wasting Casey Schmidt's defensive talent by playing him at first base. But the way that they're using Casey Schmitt is the exact role that they were using David Villar. And so the move was to DFA David Villar when they activated Casey Schmitt yesterday. And so David Villar DFA'd again. So he goes through that process again where he could be claimed. And maybe now that it's not opening day time anymore, maybe some team does put in a claim. And whatever team that would be, if they did that, same rules apply, where he would be immediately added to that active roster, the major league roster, and his same situation would be inherited by another team, where he could not be optioned because he's out of minor league options. That's why they're in this whole situation where they have to keep DFAing him. So that wouldn't be a bad outcome for David Villar because it would mean you're on a major league roster. In fact, it's probably I don't know what he would prefer. Probably to be claimed, because it would mean some team wants to give him a major league opportunity. Whereas if he clears waivers, this is where it gets interesting. He would have the right to elect free agency. And so given that his opportunities with the Giants have been sparse, to say the least, if you're David Villar, you would probably elect free agency, and you would probably end up signing a minor league deal, meaning you wouldn't be on the 40-man, because if you were, you'd have to be on the major league roster. But I don't know, a team like the Rockies, to me, makes a lot of sense for a guy like David Villar. But of course, as we saw with Lou Trevino, he could end up on the Dodgers. This got planted into my mind when Dan Szymborski, the creator of the Zips projection system, continues to talk about how his projection system likes David Villar. And he said the Giants don't really, with signing Matt Chapman long-term, they don't really have a spot for David Villar. And yet the projection system likes him. And he said he could totally see him as a guy who ends up on another team, which is going to be the case now, almost certainly. And he said perhaps the Dodgers pick him up. He could see him joining the Dodgers and having a couple of 2-win seasons with the Dodgers. So that would be painful to watch from the perspective of a Giants fan, although I don't think anyone would be unhappy to see David Villar have success. He's just one of these guys who never got like a major opportunity with the Giants, although he did go into the 2023 season as the quote-unquote incumbent at third base, even though on opening day they didn't start him. And that was one of those mixed messaging things that had fans understandably irritated with the previous regime, and Gabe Kapler was manager at the time. How do you call someone the incumbent and then opening day comes around and they don't start? That doesn't really make any sense. It was Wilmer Flores. So anyway, probably the end. And if so, we'll obviously await official word with what happens with David Villar. He's in DFA limbo, as we say right now, where he could be claimed. And this will all get resolved within, I think it's a week, or it could be less than that, but it's no more than a week. And we'll know if he cleared waivers or not. But in all likelihood, he doesn't end up back with the Giants. The only scenario he ends up back with the Giants is if he clears waivers and then elects or accepts a voluntary assignment to the minor leagues, or that the Giants wouldn't have to sign him to a minor league deal. That would just be, he could kind of see what's out there and if any other team wants to sign him, and if not, he could stay with the organization. But I would imagine some team out there would give him a chance on a minor league deal at the very least. And so it would represent some better opportunity where there's playing time potentially at the major league level for him at some point, even if it's not right now. So we'll see. But, it's kind of sad when you see players just kicked to the curb, so to speak. But that is the nature of the business. So wishing the best to David Villar, who is in that limbo situation right now. And one player who's not in limbo is Mr. Renaissance himself, Robbie Ray. The Robbie Ray Renaissance is real. Every time he's started recently, we've discussed how his resurgence has been very impressive to watch. It does make that trade look better and better by the day. When they got him for Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani, Mariners are still paying Mitch Haniger even though they released him, and the Giants are just getting Robbie Ray looking like 2021 Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray right now. So we'll discuss the Robbie Ray Renaissance and preview Hayden Birdsong's first start of the year in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, the Robbie Ray Renaissance, the Robbie Ray Resurgence. It's been very real and great to see. I remember when the Giants made the trade for Robbie Ray, Farhan Zaidi, who was president of baseball operations at the time, said he viewed once they got him, they were like, we view him as the ideal complement to Logan Webb at the front of our rotation. And that made a lot of people, myself included, feel like uneasy because we all wanted, I think, like them to go out at that whatever offseason. I think that was prior to last year, to go out and they did end up signing Blake Snell. So that was in fact the ideal complement to Logan Webb at the time, and last year was a weird year for Snell. But nonetheless, it was like, really, we wanted Snell, fans wanted Snell, and it's like, no, you're getting an injured Robbie Ray. So nonetheless, you got rid of two bad contracts in Haniger and DeSclafani, and you got a guy who won a Cy Young award not long ago, and he was just rehabbing from Tommy John, but he would come back eventually, and now he's back. So those comments were weird-ish at the time, but right now he is pitching like that legitimate number 2 starter in the rotation behind Logan Webb with 7 shutout innings yesterday, which is kind of just the norm now, it seems, with Robbie Ray. 7 innings, 6 runs, just 6 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. The 1 walk being a big deal because if anything home runs have been a bit of an issue in his career, but so have walks. But on the season now, he lowered his earned run average to 2.67. So we are going to look. That's in 57 and a third inning. So if we look at the leaders, I'm assuming he's qualified because he's made, I think, all of his starts. Yeah, so he's got the same ERA as Tarek Skubal, who won the Cy Young Award in the American League last year, and he's got the same ERA as Zach Wheeler. Like, those are two of the better pitchers in baseball, Zach Wheeler and Tarek Skubal, and there's Robbie Ray sitting with the exact same 2.67 ERA. Now, both Skubal and Wheeler have better peripheral numbers, but it's not like Robbie Ray's peripheral numbers are bad. Robbie Ray has a 3.22 expected ERA, which ranks him, why don't I see his name? 21st in baseball among, by the way, all of this is among 80 qualified pitchers. And so 21st, right around the same number as like Kodai Senga and Chris Bassett, who's had a really good year for the Toronto Blue Jays. And then the fielding independent pitching for Robbie Ray is 348, and that ranks, that's going to be a little bit higher. That ranks at 32nd, but that's right around where Jacob deGrom is. So just any way you look at it, the fact that they got Robbie Ray for 2 bad contracts, players who contributed nothing to the team that they went to, the Mariners, who also flipped Anthony DeSclafani, and then he got hurt and missed the entire year and then became a free agent. And Mitch Haniger still being paid this year by the Mariners under contract, and the Giants. So look, I know people are done and over with Farhan Zaidi, but this move, like getting Robbie Ray out of this, it just looks better and better by the start right now. And unfortunately, they weren't able to win the game. It was the first time all season they haven't won a Robbie Ray start, so I can't sit here and say they wasted another gem by Robbie Ray. It was the first time they wasted anything from Robbie Ray, because whether he's done well or not well, they've won every game except yesterday that he started. And I don't know, it's just with a rotation that had Logan Webb and then a bunch of question marks, Robbie Ray is answering those question marks in a very, very positive way, whereas I think we've seen more of the question marks continue with Justin Verlander. We saw the question marks materialize into a move to the bullpen for Jordan Hicks. And Landon Roop, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag where the peripheral numbers have been strong, but the ERA was a little bit bloated, although it came down a lot in his last start with 6 shutout innings. So the rotation has kind of been as advertised, with Logan Webb and then a bunch of a bunch of question marks, but Robbie Ray is the one guy who's really stepped up and pitched in terms of those veterans like Hicks, Verlander, Robbie Ray. It was all, you don't know what you're going to get. Well, I guess it's been 3 really different outcomes where Verlander, it's kind of as expected, mediocre results. With Jordan Hicks, it was bad results. And with Robbie Ray, it's been good results. And then, yeah, you've got Landa Roop, more, young player establishing himself. And then Hayden Birdsong replacing Jordan Hicks and going tonight. And I think it's just, it's a great opportunity for Hayden Birdsong, who comes into this game with a 2.31 ERA this season in 23 and a third innings, but the peripheral numbers are worse. The expected ERA is over 4. The fielding independent pitching is almost 5. But he does strike people out. He does have pitches that grade as above average, including the changeup, which grades as just kind of an elite pitch. And the issue is location. So I said this yesterday, I'll say it again today. If he can attack the strike zone, I do, just in general, the Royals are an aggressive team, and we'll see. Let me check really quick if that's the case again this year. I would assume it is. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have to look, but there it is. They have the lowest walk rate in the major leagues, do the Royals, and so they'll chase. And so this is probably perhaps strategic in that they're letting Birdsong make his first start of the year against a team that's super aggressive and doesn't really walk. So something's got to give. If you tell me he walks like 2 or less, I would expect even 3 or less maybe. I would expect good results. No, I'll say 2 or less. And if it's more than that, then maybe I wouldn't. So that'll be the key, is command of the strike zone and just strike rate in general. Like, it's not all about walks. It can also be about falling behind and getting into poor counts, or getting ahead and getting into good counts. That's the key for Birdsong, and we'll see if it materializes tonight. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter/X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.